Inner Directions presents Open to the Infinite with Satyam Nadine.
On satsang tour, as I have been the last 3 out of 4 weeks for the last 2 years, I talk about the shift that's happening. And my first secret about this shift I learned very early when I was giving an intensive at the Dominican College in San Francisco, and I had Peter McKenna lead me. So I'm going to use that same secret right now, just like Katie did. Peter?
We've come together in a circle here today, within the heart, from where we love, from where we pray, from where we discover the endless source of grace, from where we meet ourselves in each other in this place. The past has done its mission. It brought us here today, and so has done its work for us forever. The future is waiting at the crossroads patiently. In this moment there is nothing that can keep away the tenderness and love that we share. At a time like this, when all is said and done, and there is nothing to be lost or won, at a time like this, when grace comes showering on us, all I can say, hallelujah, hallelujah, there is a greater spirit soaring in the sky, always in the sky of the heart. We've come together in a circle here today, within the heart, from where we love, from where we pray. You can let go now and rest in your breath. You can find out what truly matters. Future is waiting at the crossroads patiently. In this moment there is nothing that can keep away the tenderness and love that we share. At a time like this, when all is said and done, and there is nothing to be lost or won, at a time like this, when grace comes showering on us, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. There is a greater spirit soaring in the sky, always in the sky of the heart. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. There is a greater spirit soaring in the sky, always in the sky of the heart.
Peter used to kid me all the time about how can you talk about source, the ineffable? And after I heard him, I thought, how can you sing about him? When Ahmed was introducing Katie, he said, there's love, and everything else is gossip. And with Katie, you got pure love. And with me, you get the gossip. I'm going to gossip here the whole time about what's happening out there in the world of enlightenment. Everybody here wants to get enlightened, right? Do we even know what we're talking about? There are libraries full of books in Western mysticism and Eastern spirituality talking about enlightenment and awakening, and nobody knows what they're talking about. I'm telling you. How do I know this? Because I don't even use those words. Those are the no-no words. I use the word shift. There is a shift happening right now that in tracking it, I saw it, again, this is from Rear Vision. It came in really strong about 6 to 8 years ago. It started, and getting stronger and reaching critical mass as we're moving forward. And this shift has nothing to do with all the traditional concepts and conditioning that you might imagine enlightenment or awakening would incur. Because if you leave it up to the mind, if the mind can fill in the blanks on a wish list for enlightenment, it would be miserable after it got it. So that's not it. So I set about, very scientifically, to examine this shift. First, I had a lot of time in prison to do that. There was nothing else to do. I started off the first 2 years in a little crowded county jail cell in Florida, where I was the only white boy and 32 young black gangbangers who did not appreciate a white boy in their midst. And so I got to be real still and quiet and listen. And I would consider that my dark night of the soul period, because we're going to talk a lot about the dark night of the soul today. And in there, mysteriously, never ever at any point because of me, but in spite of me, there happened a shift, a dimensional shift of how I viewed reality. And remember now, I have no external reference to what's happening to anybody else in the world right here. These young boys are trying to kill themselves and each other and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like trying to be invisible and just kind of watch what's happening. And in my own shift, I experienced a dimensional quantum leap from 52 years of being a seeker, starting 13 years in the Catholic seminary, monastery, to be a priest. And after that, 25 years of intense Eastern spiritual seeking in ashrams, in meditation, in yoga, in fasting. There's a list of stuff I did in the Onions book that's 2 pages long, that most of you have done all of those things. Never brought me anywhere except finally to the place that I'm finding is almost a universal in this shift. It brought me to a period of what I describe as the dark night of the soul. In this dark night of the soul, my description is basically a universal one from talking to thousands of people who have already gone through this same shift, this same dark night of the soul. You arrive at a point after looking all your life to know the thoughts of God and go home. You're in touch with this longing, this intense longing to know God. You don't even know what God means, but it comes from the separation. And your true essence as the source, locked into limitation by design to have a unique experience in this realm we call the third dimension. And when you're in this dark night of the soul, everything begins to fall away that you've held sacred and important in your life. Your relationships start to crumble, your careers, your hobbies, everything that you thought was important to you goes flat. And I think there's a logical reason for that, because for this shift to happen, there needs to be alone, quiet time for you to hear the witness that you are, that little voice speaking. It's always been there. But the third dimension is dominated by the mind. And the mind's job, as designed with infinite intelligence, is to take every thought coming in, break it into polarity, which is basically a judgment. And one half of you is in desire for it, and the other half of you is in resistance to what it is not. But it's more like 80% resistance and 20% desire. That's what a good little mind does. And then, after it judges something, its next step is to do something about it. To change it, to make it better. This is why meditation teachers for thousands of years said, listen, if you meditate, maybe you can calm that mind or stop it. It's not going to happen. The mind was designed with infinite intelligence to do its thing. Make stories. It's a storyteller. But in this dark night of the soul, you're just so beat down because everything you as the individual little me personality, as opposed to the I amness of Source, this little me is the result of a mind swirling, making judgments, and trying to be God's little helper. That dark night of the soul, and it takes away your health and your career and everything and your hope for God. It feels definitely like God has abandoned you when you're in this dark night of the soul. And you're at a point of despair, so much so it feels like a real death. This is the feedback from everyone. Not that you're suicidal, but death would be a great option if it were possible in a nice, clean way. But if you're a seeker, and you're in touch with the intensity of this longing to go home, source is not a cruel joke. It's a happening. It's happening right now like it's never happened in the history of the world. We've always had a handful of awakened ones walking among us, telling us a lot of do's and don'ts about this field of enlightenment. Again, not a mistake, purposeful disinformation, like all religions and all philosophies. They all have like a piece of the truth. It's like the 6 blind men describing the elephant. Source was waiting for the mango to get ripe enough to fall off the tree by itself. You can take a gale force wind and blow them on a mango tree, and if they're not ripe, they're not going to fall off. The harder you blow, the harder they hang on. I've got a whole orchard full of them in Costa Rica. But when that mango is ripe, all by itself, with no effort, it plops off. And if it waited one more day, it'd be overripe. If you pull it off the day before, it's still a little bitter. There's this perfect timing when a mango falls off the tree. That's the secret of the shift. The shift is now. If you're a seeker, if you're in touch with the longing, you're part of it, whether you like it or not. There's a lot of good news, bad news about this whole shift. Bad news is there's nothing you can do to speed it up or make it happen. And that's the good news too. This is a happening that I've tracked in myself for the last 6 years. And the very month I got out of prison, within 2 weeks, I had my first satsang intensive in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I was astounded to hear 35 people tell me about their experience of the shift once I had explained mine. To see people at all various points in this same shift. Some of them completely through it, some of them with their little toe in it, some at the halfway point. Then, having satsang, 3 out of 4 weeks since then, all over, not just the United States, but many other countries, all over Europe, Canada, South America. Everyone's the same. I'm not coming into any surprises anywhere. People are feeling the intensity of the longing to such a point that they're going through this dark night of the soul very quickly and coming out the other side. How do we know where the other side is? It's very simple. I call it the halfway point. It's like I drew a line in the sand with my heel. This is the halfway point. The halfway point is when the longing that has driven you all of your life to be a seeker for God, to know God, to have devotion to God, to do the right thing, to be evolved, to be more conscious, to help your neighbor, to save the world, to whatever it is that you thought was your purpose in life, disappears. The longing stops in the middle. Someone who spent 50 years of their life yearning, crying for God, all of a sudden says, I don't care. Doesn't matter anymore. This is happening in front of my eyes every weekend. I just came back a few months ago from Germany. And in every city, there was a crowd like this. And the sign just said, satsang about the longing and freedom. And I had to have an interpreter, and I would put these people in a chair. I'd say, tell me about your longing. They couldn't. They were just like, we went through 6 boxes of Kleenex every time. They could just cry. The longing was so intense they couldn't talk about it. A German not being able to talk. Crying and crying because it's so intense now. It's never been this intense. This is what I'm finding out. There's a whole new paradigm around this shift. The result of traveling around the world and having satsang with so many people in this shift has led to my second book that Hay House gave me a deadline. I had to have it out by March 1st. So I took off the last 6 weeks out of the schedule, and I went down to my retreat center in Costa Rica and just was quiet and still. And I was just totally amazed what came out chapter after chapter. And the way it came out by itself, again, it's, you never write a book. It's like anyone who writes a book is channeled. There's no you to write it. And it came out, the myth of enlightenment, and then the other side of it was the reality of the shift. And explored dozens and dozens of myths around enlightenment that I've heard in the last 2 years that are pure myth. It's on the tip of everybody's tongue. When I'm enlightened, I'll just feel bliss. When I'm enlightened, I won't have any more troubles. And so on and so on. That's not the reality. That's a concept that came from who knows where. And when you know for sure that you're in this shift, and boy, you will know. It's like a cosmic orgasm. It's not like, I don't know if I'm there or not yet. You know because you arrive at a point beyond question, beyond doubt, and beyond knowledge, beyond experience even, that consciousness is all there is, and I am that. Now, you can understand that intellectually, maybe, but that doesn't change your whole life. The day you remember who you are, your whole reality shifts to another dimension. And one of the myths is enlightenment, awakening is sudden. It isn't. You get a glimpse. You get one glimpse. Some people have that glimpse last for 2 weeks at the most, where they're just blissed out. That is what I call a peak experience. That's not the shift. The shift is a valley experience with no peaks as part of the perpetual state that stays with you. Yes, there's peaks, but let's not call that the shift. So if you're blissed out for a week or two with this realization of who you are, and then the bliss goes away and you're right back in the third dimension full of contractions again, and you're thinking, oh, I lost it. You didn't lose it. That was the first glimpse. I've read books about awakenings where people said, I had 7 awakenings. They just had 7 bobbing in and outs. This is a subtle, gradual process that stems out of the dark night of the soul, when all of the efforting you've done your whole life as the doer crumbles with your identity of who you thought you were as the doer, and you relax into this incredible, delicious space of just being ordinary. The driving force of being special that pushed you all your life into fixing and making better is gone. The need to know God is gone because you are God. Not intellectually. In every cell of your body, you know beyond knowing who you are. This is an ancient memory. This was always with you. And I call this space presence. And when I start talking about presence, I have to talk about the witness. Because it's the witness that is the difference between the third and the fourth dimension. In the third dimension, by design, you identify with the mind. And everything that the mind puts out, you identify with as real. It's the way it's supposed to be. Why would Source do that? It sounds like a mistake to me. Source is energy. When Source is at rest, the Bhagavad Gita talks about this, some of the Vedas. It is infinite expansion. It is impersonal. And yet this energy pulses into the world of appearance. The Bhagavad Gita even has a time period on it in Earth years. 340 trillion, 60 billion Earth years is one pulse. Rest, appearance. Don't know, don't care. But I do know we're in the world of appearance now for sure. That I know. And when you look at the shift from the inside out, not look at it from the mind what you would like to have, but look at it as what is actually occurring in your life, you are Source. That means whatever is happening in this world of appearance is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Source is not a big old screw-up that needs you to help fix his mistakes. The witness is sitting there and is watching the mind spin stories. Out of these stories comes all of the negative emotions. The very same negative emotions you've been spending your whole life trying to change and fix and make go away. How many workshops have you done on anger management? How many pillows have you beat? How many empty chairs have you talked to? Trying to get in touch with your inner child or whatever. Is this a mistake? Source has come into this world of appearance to examine in a personal way. Remember, at rest, Source is impersonal. It's having a very personal experience through this mind-body organism right now. And part of this mind-body organism is this little machine up here that is interpreting everything and judging and wanting to do something about it. And that is creating disappointment and anger and frustration and depression. All of the things that we're trying to fix. What if Source was here to experience the dark side of the Force? The shadow side of its true nature as Satchitananda. That's what the ancients describe Source at rest. Sat, an eternal reality. Chi, aware of itself. Ananda, in bliss. I'm going to erase the bliss part for the world of appearance. You are Satchitananda, but part of your nature in this world of appearance is not so much bliss. I would change that from my own experience and that of others to deep peace and freedom. Forget the bliss part. That's an interpretation in English of the Sanskrit, so I don't know if they got it right. My definition would be more like deep, lasting peace, all is well, and I'm totally free. That's my experience. As above, so below. So here you are, spending your whole life trying to get rid of why you came here. Only a mind could do that. And then you sit here in meditation and doing all these spiritual disciplines trying to stop the mind from doing what it was supposed to do. Of course it doesn't work. How will I be after I'm awakened? Exactly the same way you were before. There are no practical advantages in the third dimension to being totally awake and having a fourth dimensional experience of who you are. Your bills still don't get paid. You still don't get to meet your soulmate. You still get stopped in traffic for tickets. Unlike Ram Dass's cop, mine writes me tickets. But I'm awake. How could you write me a ticket? Listen, this is the biggest secret of the shift that I'm going to share with you that perhaps has never been said in the history of talking about enlightenment. There's two myths I want to get covered today. The first one is, instead of it being the end of all your troubles, I define trouble as a contraction. And a contraction is anything in your life that makes you go, no. Most of the time, it's hell no. It's there. It's present. You can feel it in every part of your body and emotions. No. Maybe 20 times a day. This no is this contraction is your invitation from Source in the fourth dimension for a great big hug and caress. Because now, in this fourth dimensional shift, when there's a contraction, instantaneously, after a couple of years, after this thing is more or less permanent, in the beginning it may be 5 minutes later after the contraction starts, but when it's permanent, instantaneously, in the middle of the contraction, the witness, who you really are, is not identifying with that emotion or that contraction. The witness says, anger's present. Can I say yes to that? Yeah, I can say yes to that. You're allowing the contraction to be there with no need to fix it or make it go away. This is the secret of the shift, because I remember somebody, I don't remember his name, wrote a book about 30 years ago called Be Here Now. And except that I never got, how do you be here now? I always wondered for 30 years, that's a good idea, but how do I get here? I know how to get here. The way I get here now is I'm going along and things are fine, and then a contraction comes up. I'm not totally present when things are going fine. I guess I'm not supposed to be, or I would be. But when a contraction comes up and I say no, immediately there's this beautiful, softening, relaxing witness that says, okay. And what it does, it pulls me right now into the present moment. And I remember who I am. And I hear satsang out of that contraction. And I feel loving gratitude come out of that contraction. And I feel a sense of presence. I am that. In case I forget, 20 times a day, every time somebody gets in the fast lane and they're a slow driver, I get to remember who I am. Every contraction is a caress. You don't fix your contractions. You embrace them. You can't embrace anything. The mind's job is to put up objections. The witness, who you really are, embraces the situation. Guess what happens to the contraction when it's embraced by the witness? Poof! Poof! It's gone. Now, if your mother dies, the poof may last a day or two, but it's not going to drag you into clinical depression like it used to. This, to me, I never heard an awakened master say, your contractions are your way home. Do we have to go out and create contractions? I don't think so. They're everywhere. Everywhere. Every one of them is the longing pulling you into Source and remembering who you are. Now, I wish there was a technique I could give you that could make that happen for you, where the witness kicks in automatically. I can't. You can go home and meditate. You can go home and watch the football game, and you got the same chance either way. There's not a cause and effect between the disciplines and the result. But let me share some really interesting phenomenon with you. In talking to thousands of people who are, I would consider, fully through the shift, here's the kind of universal. They're seekers. They're New Agers. I mean, this is a circle I'm running in. I'm sure if I were a Muslim running around, Iran or something, it might be different. But they're New Agers. 90% of them have done TM. Half of them have been to India and gotten dysentery looking for their guru. They're really into sensitivity about their bodies and the ecology. They're on the cutting edge of God's little helpers. And all of them crashed and burned in the dark night of the soul and said, I give up. I give up. It doesn't work. And that's when the transformation took place. When they finally gave up. So listen, there is a connection between the discipline and the shift, because the discipline provides the contrast. You try so hard as a doer to get there. And if you didn't try, you wouldn't be pushed to your limits. You try so hard to know God and get enlightened that you fail. And your mind realizes, finally, you can't do it. You can't do it. That is the relief. That's when you start feeling ordinary again, and you don't have to know God. You're home. You're home. And then come 400 other concepts about feeling like this. It's like, wow, aren't I supposed to be helping the poor right now? And do I really have to give up sex? And there's so many silly, funny concepts out there that I could write many books about it. I'm going to have to really discipline myself to cut it off at the 70,000 words that they've limited me to. It's so funny. And I'm not telling you just about my experience, because I already told you about my experience in the Onions book. This book is about the phenomenon that has never happened, as far as I know, in the history of recorded history anyway, where the seekers, when maybe that's 1% of the population, are feeling this shift. They're feeling a force field, unifying field, whatever it is, that's shaking up their whole world. I don't know anybody that's a seeker right now that's not living on the edge. Every seeker is pushed to the limit right now. Every seeker is feeling the intensity of wanting to go home so strong it's taking precedent over everything else in their life. And Source is now revealing itself like never before in history. It's coming clean. The game of hide and seek is over for seekers. And I love a principle that I use all the time in defining this shift. William of Ockham, 500 years ago, scientist, philosopher, when they were trying to figure out if the sun was going around the earth around the sun, whatever, there were many, many, many contradictory solutions. And he came up with this brilliant piece of, all things being equal, the only true solution to a problem is the most simple one. Let's apply this to the shift. What could be more simple? Instead of going out and trying to find God, I am that. Instead of looking at all our people out there the way Sartre did and said, hell is other people, they are that. You are that. And instead of doing enormous, lifelong austerities and disciplines to get there, you're already there to start with. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. Understanding is all you need. Just be. Do nothing. It's already taken care of. That only leaves room for two elements left in your life once you realize that. Loving gratitude and celebration. That's all that's left. I couldn't imagine in a million years me going back to a Zen monastery and sitting in Zazen or the whole litany. But I still spend quality time every day, what looks like meditating. But I'm not meditating in the old way. In the old way, it was like a technique. I was like trying to stop my mind, slow my mind, do mantras. When I meditate now, I just sit and I feel the presence. You can't do presence. You are presence. Presence is this bridge between feeling separate and knowing you are consciousness. The bridge is presence. I sit and I feel this. And then I really feel like a cat that curls up in the sun and purrs. So I call it purring. I don't meditate, I purr. And the average length of time I'm finding out for people coming out of the dark night of the soul, feeling the shift, and drawing that line that we call the halfway point where they no longer care and it starts to become permanent is about 2 years. Interesting phenomenon with you. In talking to thousands of people who are, I would consider, fully through the shift, here's the kind of universal. They're seekers. They're New Agers. I mean, this is a circle I'm running in. I'm sure if I were a Muslim running around, Iran or something, it might be different. But they're New Agers. 90% of them have done TM. Half of them have been to India and gotten dysentery looking for their guru. They're really into sensitivity about their bodies and the ecology. They're on the cutting edge of God's little helpers. And all of them crashed and burned in the dark night of the soul and said, I give up. I give up. It doesn't work. And that's when the transformation took place. When they finally gave up. So listen, there is a connection between the discipline and the ship. because the discipline provides the contrast. You try so hard as a doer to get there, and if you didn't try, you wouldn't be pushed to your limits. You try so hard to know God and get enlightened that you fail. Monks would have their satori's. They had to sit 10 years and realize the ramifications of it before they were allowed to even talk about it. It's going a lot faster now. It's not taking a major crisis now like it used to. Instead of using a sledgehammer, Source is using a peacock feather to push the seekers through. And don't feel sorry for the other 99%, please. They have not been afflicted by this terminal disease called seeking. They're okay with living a normal life. You are the poor ones that are in misery because you're seekers. So let the other 99% have their experience as Source in appearance doing its thing. You're not special because you're in the shift. That other 99% are also Source in appearance. And my hit on it is their big aha experience. I am not limited. I am the Source. I am consciousness. Comes at the moment of death. There's this, it's the bubble floating on the ocean of consciousness that thinks it's separate, that thinks it's going where it wants to. It pops and it realizes it was always the ocean. But that's what's happening to the other 99%. The 1%, while they're still a bubble, are having the aha experience. Not the big one, but a whole series every day. Every time there's a contraction, they have the little aha, aha, aha. You cannot say yes to the no as a human being in the human predicament unless you have the shift. It's grace. The mind doesn't give up control. The witness emerges and takes control. It doesn't identify what the mind's doing. You're never going to be free of the mind, but you're going to be free in it. You're never going to be free of troubles, but you're going to be free in it, in the troubles. Not only are they not perceived as troubles anymore, they're perceived as grace of the Guru, every one of them. What an amazing story. Who would have thought, if you searched all of literature about enlightenment and awakening, that it could be this simple? And that's my next and last point about this myth. The biggie I got to come up against every single intensive happens on Sunday afternoon, and all weekend they've been sitting there going, yeah, right on, yeah. And then comes, wait a minute, something's really wrong here, wait a minute. This is too simple. This can't be. Got to be more to it than that. That's the death rattle, the last death rattle of the mind. It looks to complication as its fulfillment. This is too simple. There's nothing to do. You're not the doer. Just be. You're here to experience all of the human emotions, not get rid of them. That's too simple. But there's nothing to do. Then I know it's wrong. When I'm dealing with this question at the end of an intensive, there's 6 things about the people saying it. 1, they're futurist. Awakening happens in the future. It never happens now. Or they're other orientated. It happens to other people, but it doesn't happen to me. Or they're doing orientated. Well, I could see it happening if you did enough. If you did enough meditation and yoga and ate the right foods, you might get there. But it involves doing. Then there's the tradition ones that, well, this is nothing like tradition. In tradition, you have the master, the guru, and these are other myths that we covered before, but that's a big one for people to let go of. You need a guru. You need a teacher. You know who the new guru is? There is a new guru out. And Buddha predicted 2,500 years ago that there would be an age of enlightenment right about this time. So did the Hopi Indians, so did the Mayan Indians. They've all got a peg for right now. Buddha said that the one that would lead in this age of enlightenment's name was Maitreya. Anybody ever hear that name, Maitreya? Well, Maitreya, in Sanskrit, means my friend. And my friend is what I'm calling satsang circles. Satsang circles are springing up everywhere. You don't have to pay $10 to go to the satsang circle. You invite your friends over for dinner, for a get-together. You share your truth, your experience, what's happening right now. No agenda. Not trying to proselytize anybody or commit. You're just sharing what's happening for you right now in that moment. And that creates such a transmission of energy that it is absolutely dissolving concepts. It's so powerful that when we have a weekend of satsang, people driving home are spacey. They get lost going home, and it's like 6 blocks away. It's really a very powerful process. I don't know what to call it. It's what Jesus said when he said, when 2 or more of you are gathered in my name. Well, when you just gather together to share your experience, that's satsang. And the shift is using the satsang circles in lieu of gurus, teachers. Satsang circles are leaderless. There's facilitators, but there's no leaders. We've come into an era that is basically going away from the gurus and teachers of the past and going to the Satguru within. You have infinite knowledge, infinite wisdom within you. Everyone does. Everyone here is an appearance of source. You don't need to reach out to books or workshops or anything for the truth. It's coming. It's happening. When you're ripe enough, you're going to fall off the mango tree, and you can't make it happen one day sooner. And you can't stop it. It's going to happen. If you're in touch with the longing, you're going home. It's that simple. So if your mind is saying right now, this is too simple, this can't be true, that's a death rattle. Because it is true. One of the other points that I was saying that these people are, they're also image conscious, like you don't look like a awakened one to me, and my neighbors have just got up and said he was awakened. I sure don't think he doesn't look awakened to me. The last one that's ever going to say you're awakened is your wife and kids, that's for sure. This shift is too subtle. It doesn't change any of your predispositions that you were born with, that came unique with your DNA and your conditioning, made everyone on the planet individually unique. So when you feel this shift in awareness, that part doesn't change. So Source does not like to clone itself. It likes different diversity experiences. So when you shift, you will have a unique experience as Source. It's the body that has the same old predispositions. That's why you don't get to be a prophet in your own country. And the last one, that one that really cracks me up, is they say, all right, what's your lineage? What are your powers? What kind of siddhas do you have? Well, my lineage is, I just got out of prison, selling drugs, and, but I do have a supernatural power. I do. Everybody in the shift does. And it's not the ones that you would put on your list about enlightenment. You don't get to walk on water. You don't get to cure cancer. You don't get to read everybody's mind. The supernatural power that has never been available before, that is available now in this shift, is the witness dancing yes to the no as it occurs. That's never been possible before. And I can assure you, there are people in this room that I know are part of this shift that would get up and tell you yes in the middle of the no every time it happens. That's a supernatural power. They didn't tell you about that one when you read the books. That's the one that's going to happen, so get used to it. And I'm sitting here saying that the secret of this shift is no more teachers, and here I am, blah, blah, blah. So, the secret of this shift is satsang. Satsang means whoever gets up, anyone in this room, with that mic, that is sacred truth coming from source. No one has ever told a lie when they spoke their truth. I don't care how opposite it is of your truth or your experience, but look, in this universe there is the law of balance and there is the law of contrast. Anyone having this experience automatically means that somebody else has to have the opposite experience. That's the law of contrast. So when they're saying their experience, that's sacred truth. If you think your wife is lying to you, she's telling a true lie. Nothing can come out of this mouth as source and be a lie. So part of satsang is we honor whoever is speaking as sacred truth. No one is wrong, ever. Ever, ever. No matter what they're saying or doing. So, this is where we open it up for your satsang. And it doesn't have to just be questions. It can be, that's a form of satsang. But what I'm more accustomed to hearing is people getting up and talking about their own shift, their own dark night of the soul, their own ability to relax into their contractions now. That has never happened before. And they didn't have a teacher bring them here. And it just happened by itself. Wow. That's what we're living in right now. Literally, millions of people are shifting into this fourth dimensional awareness. So please, it's open for comments, sharings, questions, whatever.
Okay, so why is it that all these years, all of us who've done TM and Muktananda and all this, why are they having us do all this if it didn't do anything? Please tell me that.
Source is very clever. Very clever. Ever since the beginning of time, Source has been revealing itself more and more and more. Let's look at Moses, eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Then Buddha comes along and says, compassion. Jesus comes along and says, love your brother. And it just keeps getting, and then we get to the New Age where your thoughts create your reality. Start watching your thoughts, and it gets, watch your diet, getting more and more and more refined. And still nothing quite getting. No one has ever been able to take anything an awakened one said and use it to wake up. Because there were too many do's and don'ts involved in it. This freedom of the shift, there are no do's or don'ts, ever. Know who you are and then do whatever you want. That sounds like license for mayhem, but it isn't. Because when you're in this space, you're in harmlessness. You absolutely live in harmlessness. So it was the contrast of 10,000 years of disinformation, very cleverly disseminated by Source out there, because that's the only one talking, to bring you to this point of despair where you give it up. And then you give it up, the relief is overwhelming. You would never have appreciated this shift if you didn't try really hard your whole life to find God. It's a game. Hide and go find. We're finding. This is the time to find. Every discipline you did brought you to this point of giving it up. You're ready. Ripe mango falling right now. That song that Peter just sang, the past has done its mission, has brought us here today. I have 3 statements I run my whole life on. One is, if it's an act of God, like it's a rainstorm and I just got all wet or whatever, it's so be it, so be it. If it involves a human, then it's so what? All right, so what? But if it involves a question of the mind, like why did this happen? Don't know, don't care. And I mean, I really am in that space of don't know, don't care. The mind has got infinite questions about the vastness. You know what the vastness says back? Don't know, don't care. Because you're feeling a presence. You feel presence that is beyond all questions. There's no room for questions with the presence. And the presence is even there when you sleep. And even I'm dreaming in 4D. Really. The fourth dimensional awareness I have when I'm awake is there when I'm dreaming. The presence, the witness, never ever goes away once it settles down. But it doesn't work like sudden. The sun does not come up in the morning and go straight up to noon. It's so gradual you can hardly see it, and when it goes down. That's what the shift is. It's gradual, so gradual, even you don't know it because you have all these concepts about what you think it's going to be. You're still having thoughts and judgments, and you still get mad. I couldn't be in the shift. Yeah, you are. Being mad and having thoughts is part of the human predicament. Nothing to do with the shift. So,
there's no world to save.
There are no more sacred cows. If you're hungry now, eat them.
I have a question. I'm a new seeker, only been on the path for about 1.5 years, just been meditating for about 2 months. Do I have to wait 30 years?
This is the great unfairness of the shift. Boy, I get this. I've had 17-year-olds that just got out of high school come to the intensive and totally there, and they're how can that be? I spent 50 years meditating and he gets it for nothing.
That's great news. Thank you.
Yes. Here we go, up front here.
Did you know it was going to happen before it happened?
Absolutely no clue. In fact, while it was happening, I had no clue. What is going on? All of a sudden, I know I moved from being in total fear for my life to absolute knowing that all is well. And this was like sudden. That part was sudden for me. But so was the crisis. And simultaneous with this not being in fear anymore, in a real battleground, was the knowing that I couldn't know. The mind just could never understand the vastness, so give it up. And it just went away. All of this, the yearning to know went away. And about a week later, the next insight was, well, even if I knew there's nothing I could do about it, after a lifetime of trying to do something about it. this just happened. And I didn't even know, I didn't know what it was. I had no reference point. Then when it started to dawn on me, wow, could this be, And immediately there's enough of the ego personality left there to grab on and say, wow, this is special. This is what I wanted. The witness comes in and says, this is not unique. This is happening to all seekers. Really? I mean, it was like when you're in this space, it feels as if you have access to all knowledge that you need to know. And if I was going to write a book about it, I needed to know some other things. And if you're not going to write a book, you don't need to know all these other things. You get exactly what you need. No more, but no less. So there was no way to identify it, which is so much easier now for the seekers when we're out here sharing this information. When I'm at a workshop and 35 people get up and give their process of this shift, everyone just feels so relieved that it's not just Nadine up there that's having this experience of the witness. All of these people are, or at least the ones talking about where they are in it. In other words, at the beginning of the shift, and they're still in the dark night of the soul and so forth, there's great hope that this is not just a fluke of depression. Because there's something else to this dark night of the soul. What I'm experiencing is that everybody that's in this shift also is having their body rewired. And that means they're having very strange physical phenomenon happen. They're having heart palpitations, headaches, cancers and tumors that come and go, depression, chronic fatigue, enormous amount of ailments to us New Agers who've taken such good care of ourselves all these years, and all of a sudden we're falling apart physically. Well, I think it's because the frequency of this shift is so high that a dense body can't handle it. And somehow it's being rewired. And be patient. It takes time. I wish I could tell you, I talked to somebody in the shift who didn't have anything wrong with them. They didn't go through this rewiring process, and they didn't have to deal with the dark night of the soul. They were just blissfully doing business, and one day they were totally awake. And they said, oh, that's nice. No, it hasn't happened to anybody I know of yet. I'm sure they're out there. I just haven't met them yet.
I did meet one who said it was a non-event, and I've heard other teachers say there is no such thing as enlightenment.
They're right, because enlightenment is a concept. It's a pure concept. Just like everything I'm telling you today is a pure concept. Anything that comes out of these words, this mouth, passes through the mind. But in the case of satsang, we're in satsang here, in case you didn't know. This is satsang. The transmission of energy happens never, ever because of the words. It happens in spite of the words. It happens because everyone here is open to this shift. You're open to knowing God. And in that openness, you will be filled, in spite of all the silly words that keep coming out of our mouth. Because these words are concepts. What you're after is the feeling, the knowingness. The shift is knowingness that doesn't go away of who you are. And the ramifications of that affect every detail of your life. If you're trying to put a label of it, of enlightenment or awakening or something, that's already been dragged down with too many concepts. So I put a new word on it, shift. And I keep trying to put different new words on what's happening to get out of the old vocabulary where it's just like God. I don't use the word God. It's just too many concepts. So I just use source of all that is. And until we wear that one out. In the back there.
Thank you. I rejoice in your bringing it to where we are now. What transpires in this appearance is the recognition over and over again that I see something that is not there. And what I see that is not there is separation. There's an appearance of myself appearing to be separate, as here and there, as this or that, now or then, where or what. It is not what I know. It is only an appearance in which I am expressing into my own existence as that, as a tree, as space in which things and universes appear. I rejoice in all of it. There is always the process, a waking state into a dream state, into a sleeping state. These now very clearly are states. I, as the witness, observe, allow, and rejoice. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I really enjoyed your talk. You described the dark night of the soul, and my experience over the last 8 or 9 years has been a series of dark nights of the soul. And it's been difficult for me to hang in there with that and needing, it seems to me, having to let go of everything I think I know about who I am and how I'm supposed to show up in the world. Just kind of this continuous process. And the last year or so, all of a sudden, it became very comfortable. And there's a part of me that feels relief and happiness about that. And there's another part of me, and I'm listening to you and thinking, am I at the middle point? Is that even possible? And then the other part of me is, oh my God, I've slipped back into delusion and denial. And, the worst is yet to come, more dark nights of the soul. And I guess there's no way of knowing, for you to know if I have more of that coming or if I have any more of that coming. But if you have any words of wisdom about, how to keep showing up for that
Well,
stuff.
there's two phenomena happening here by the sign. One is your intense longing, and the other is the impatience of the mind dancing around it. So you're in the delivery room right now with the delivery room blues. And I don't have any techniques I can give you and no kind words to say except in my experience of sharing with thousands of others, everyone agrees that when they go to satsang, they feel in touch with the witness more than the mind. Because there is definitely an energy transmission happening every time you get together with your friends and talk about who you are. And if who you are is angry and depressed and impatient right now, that is sacred truth. That is no more less spiritual than this kind of a satsang. There's nothing out there in the third dimension that's not spiritual. It's all divine. When are you being most divine in your daily life? You're being most divine when you are feeling a contraction. In other words, when you are being most human. When you are in touch with your human frailty and foibles, that's when you're being most divine. That's why you've come here. That's not a mistake. You don't have to fix that. The witness loves to just observe it in choiceless awareness. And in that embrace, that is love. I only have one definition for love. I've thrown out all the romantic ones that feel attraction and health, and I don't believe in any of that. My definition of love right now is embracing what is as is because it is. Because I created it. I don't understand it with my mind, but I created it. That part of me knows, the witness knows, all is well. All is truly well. And when you're feeling the contraction and feeling like you're less than divine, forget it. That's when you're the most divine. It's all backwards the way the mind interprets it. It's so simple. I wonder how I do week-long retreats in Costa Rica. I can't talk 5 minutes about it, and I talk a week about it. So instead of talking about it, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have Peter come up and sing about it. Because the silence, when we do our week-long retreats in Costa Rica, the silence is where the real transmission is happening, more so than in the words.
The present moment is my true home. The present moment is where I belong. And the miracle is not to walk on water, but to walk on this green earth. The greatest of all miracles is just to be alive. Now, that which resides in every heart, that which resides in every heart, you learn to live it, and it gives you back yourself. That which resides in every heart, that which resides in every heart, you learn to be it, and it fills you. May the fire of love ignite us. May your golden song delight us. May the spirit of your grace live in every heart. May the fire of love ignite us. May your golden song delight us. May the spirit of your grace live in every heart. happiness cannot be found through great effort and willpower, but is already present in open relaxation. And letting go, and letting go. Don't strain yourself. There is nothing to do or undo. Whatever arises in the body-mind has no real importance at all. Why identify with it and become attached to it, passing judgment upon it and ourselves? Far better to simply let the entire game happen on its own, springing up and falling back like waves, without changing or manipulating anything. And notice how everything vanishes and reappears again and again. Time without end. Don't believe in the reality of good and bad experiences. They are like the weather, like a rainbow in the sky, wanting to grasp the ungraspable. You exhaust yourself in vain. As soon as you open and relax, infinite space is here, open and inviting. Don't search any further. Don't go into the tangled jungle, looking for the great awakened elephant who's already resting at home in front of your own heart. Nothing to do or undo, nothing to want, and nothing missing. Nothing to do or undo, nothing to force, nothing to want, and nothing missing. Nothing to do or undo, nothing to force, nothing to want, and nothing missing. I am marvelous, everything happens by itself, free and easy. Am marvelous, everything happens by itself, free and easy. Am marvelous, everything happens by itself, free. Thank you. I sing one more song, and I want to dedicate this song to this gathering, to open to the infinite, to all of us who are here, to our wonderful friends, Ram Dass. I feel especially to Ram Dass as such a wonderful first kick in the pants for me. Thank you. And this song is about Ramana Maharshi. He was loved, he was adored, regarded highly by all, even worshipped as a messenger from above. He was simple, he was pure, he was silent and vast. He was an incarnation of love. The mountain was his friend and his beloved, his inspiration, his soul. He was one with the mountain, and so is he now. Oh, I am forever here. Oh, I am forever here. He was lying on his deathbed, his body was spent. It was dying, everyone knew. People around him were sad because they thought, if his body is gone, he is gone too. But where do you think I am going? The mountain is my home always. Why do you believe I am leaving? Oh, I am forever